December 3, 1987. A hunter named Carl Henderson walked into the Harlan County Sheriff's Office carrying something wrapped in a blood-stained jacket. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. When Sheriff Pierce unwrapped the bundle, he found a copper moonshine coil, still warm to the touch, with 14 names carved into the metal. Below them, one sentence: they paid the debt. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel Robert Turner had been a man who believed in 3 things: family, honor, and the mountains that had raised him. At 54 years old, he'd spent 30 years crawling through coal seams so narrow he couldn't stand upright, breathing dust that turned his lungs black, watching friends die in cave-ins while company bosses counted profits in Lexington offices. When the mines finally shut down in 1985, Daniel didn't apply for welfare, didn't move his family to the city looking for work that didn't exist. He did what his grandfather had done during Prohibition, what his father had done during the Depression. He built a still, not some rusty barrel operation hidden behind the barn. This was a $15,000 masterpiece of copper and craftsmanship, capable of producing 300 gallons of the finest moonshine in Kentucky. It took him 2 years to build, working through winters when the temperature dropped so low the metal burned his bare hands. Every pipe, every coil, every fitting represented a choice between feeding his family and following laws written by people who'd never gone hungry. Daniel chose his family. The mountains provided everything else: hidden hollows where federal agents never ventured, cold spring water that ran pure over limestone, and a network of dirt roads known only to people born within sight of Black Mountain. In Harlan County, the law was a suggestion, not a commandment. The nearest state police barracks sat 40 miles away in Middlesboro. Response time for emergencies was measured in hours, not minutes, which meant when trouble came, you handled it yourself. Mountain rules, mountain justice. Tommy Lee Garrett lived 4 miles east, up near the abandoned Clovertown mining camp. 38 years old, thick through the shoulders, with a red beard and hands missing 2 fingers from a conveyor belt accident. He ran a small mechanics shop out of his garage, fixing trucks for cash, no receipts, no taxes. Tommy had 6 brothers: Wayne, Bobby, Carl, Marcus, Kevin, and Raymond. Good men mostly, the kind who'd help you move furniture or lend you $20 when your kids needed medicine. But times were desperate in 1987. Unemployment in Harlan County hovered around 40%. The textile factory had closed, the sawmill had shut down. Families that had lived in these mountains for 5 generations were packing up and leaving for Atlanta, for Cincinnati, for anywhere that still had jobs. Word travels fast in small counties: who has money, who has equipment, who might be desperate enough to make bad decisions. Tommy Garrett heard about Daniel Turner's still from a cousin who'd seen it while hunting deer up near Martin's Fork. $15,000 worth of copper sitting in the woods, practically unguarded. To Tommy, drowning in debt with a daughter who needed braces and a son who wanted to go to community college, that still looked like salvation. One night's work: load the equipment into trucks, drive it to a scrapyard in Cincinnati, collect the cash, and disappear into a future that didn't involve poverty. On the night of October 9, 1987, Tommy Garrett and 3 of his brothers hauled 300 pounds of copper equipment out of the forest. They worked by flashlight, moving quickly, knowing that discovery meant more than just arrest. It meant violating something older than law. By sunrise, Daniel Turner's still was gone, vanished like it had never existed. Daniel discovered the theft at dawn on October 10th. He stood in that empty clearing for 20 minutes, just staring at the rectangular patch of flattened grass where his family's future had been. His breathing came shallow and fast. His hands opened and closed at his sides. When he finally walked back to his truck, his decision was already made. There were only 3 families in Harlan County who knew that still's location. Only 3 families with the trucks and manpower to move that much equipment in darkness. And one of those families had been asking about copper prices at the Middlesboro scrapyard 2 weeks earlier. That afternoon, Daniel drove his 1979 Ford pickup into Tommy Garrett's mechanic shop. Tommy was under a Chevy truck when Daniel's boots appeared beside his toolbox. Tommy rolled out on his creeper board and saw those boots, saw Daniel's face, and understood immediately that something had shifted. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. "My still disappeared last night," Daniel said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Figure you might know something about that." Tommy got to his feet, wiping grease on a rag. "That's unfortunate, Daniel, but I don't know nothing about your business. I'm giving you until sundown tomorrow, October 11th, 4 p.m. Return what's mine and we forget this happened." Tommy straightened up, 6 inches shorter than Daniel but wider through the shoulders. "You threatening me? I'm giving you fair warning. Mountain rules. You know them same as me. Man steals another man's livelihood, that debt gets settled." 3 witnesses heard the exchange. By sunset, everyone in Harlan County knew the Turners and Garretts were headed for trouble. But people had been predicting feuds for 100 years. Mostly it was just talk. Mostly men backed down before things went too far. Mostly. October 11th, 4 p.m. Daniel stood on his front porch watching the sun sink behind Little Black Mountain. No truck pulled up his driveway. No phone call came. No Garrett appeared to make things right. Just silence and the cold understanding that Tommy Garrett had made his choice. Martha appeared in the doorway behind him. "Maybe they don't have it, Daniel. Maybe you're wrong. I'm not wrong." "Then call the sheriff. Let the law handle it." Daniel finally looked at her. "You know how this works. Mountain handles mountain." Martha's face went pale. She'd lived in Harlan County her entire life. She knew exactly what that meant. Over the next 3 days, Daniel Turner transformed from father and husband into something else entirely. He borrowed rifles from his brother-in-law Frank, a Vietnam veteran with black lung disease who kept an impressive gun collection. He bought ammunition from 4 different stores, spreading purchases across counties to avoid suspicion. He spread topographic maps across his kitchen table and planned the operation with military precision, marking positions, escape routes, and timelines. His 6 sons, James, Robert, Michael, David, Thomas, and William, asked no questions. Neither did his 4 nephews. They'd been raised with the mountain code running through their blood like the coal dust in their father's lungs. When someone crosses you, you answer. When someone steals from your family, you settle the debt. The law might not understand, but the mountains did. On Thursday night, Daniel sat alone in his barn, cleaning his Winchester Model 70 by lamplight. The rifle had belonged to his father, who'd used it to hunt deer from 1952 until cancer took him in 1981. Daniel had fed his own family with this rifle during the lean years. Now he was about to use it for something his father never imagined. He thought about prison. Federal prison, probably. Life without parole if he was lucky. Death penalty if prosecutors pushed hard. He was 54 years old. Even with life, he'd die in a cell. Never see Martha again except through plexiglass. Never walk these mountains at dawn. Never hold his grandchildren when they eventually came. All of that gone. For copper. For $15,000. For the principle that a man doesn't let himself be robbed. He could stop. Could call Tommy right now, say forget it, let bygones be bygones. Could file a proper police report and let the law handle it. Might take months, might go nowhere, but at least he'd stay free. But then he thought about standing in that empty clearing, staring at the space where 2 years of work had been. Thought about Tommy's casual lie, "I don't know nothing about your business." Thought about his sons watching, learning what their father did when someone crossed him. No. Some things mattered more than freedom, more than life itself, honor, respect. The lesson that actions have consequences. Daniel reassembled the rifle, loaded 5 rounds, and set it aside. There was no turning back now. Friday evening, Martha cooked dinner. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, biscuits with butter and honey. The kind of meals she made for special occasions. Nobody talked about the rifles being cleaned in the barn or the map spread across Daniel's truck seat. They ate like it was normal. Last supper. After the meal, Daniel stood. "Boys, nephews, go on home, get some rest. Tomorrow night we handle our business." They all knew what that meant. Nobody suggested alternatives. One by one they left. James was last, standing on the porch with his keys in hand. "Dad, you sure about this? Go home, James. Kiss your wife. Hold your kids. I'll see you tomorrow." James drove away, taillights disappearing into October darkness. Martha came outside, wrapped in a cardigan. She stood beside Daniel in silence for 5 minutes before speaking. "I'll wait for you, however long it takes. I know." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Martha Jean." She was crying. He felt tears soaking his shirt. "Please don't." "Go. I have to." "No, you don't. You're choosing to." "Same thing," he said. At 10:30 p.m., Daniel walked through the dark house one last time, stood in the doorway of the bedroom he'd shared with Martha for 3 decades, memorized the quilt her mother had made, the photographs on the dresser, the way moonlight came through the curtains. This was goodbye to his home, his life, everything. Martha was sitting at the kitchen table when he came downstairs. She didn't look up. "Martha, don't." Her voice broke. "Don't say anything else. Just go." Daniel walked out into the night, started his truck, looked back at the house one final time. Lights on in the kitchen, Martha's silhouette visible through the window. He raised his hand once, didn't know if she saw it. Then he drove toward the rendezvous point where 9 other men were waiting with rifles and the shared understanding that by sunrise, nothing would ever be the same again. At 11:47 p.m. on October 11, 1987, Daniel Turner pulled into a clearing 2 miles from the Garrett compound. 9 vehicles already there, his sons, his nephews, all armed, all ready. They stood in darkness, breath steaming in cold air, waiting for their father to give the order that would transform them from coal miners and mechanics into something else entirely. What happened in the next 6 hours would leave 14 people dead and mark Harlan County forever with blood that would never wash clean. The fog was thick that night, temperature 38 degrees, moon barely visible through clouds. Daniel loaded his Winchester, checked the chamber, breathed deep. "Let's go," he said. And 10 men disappeared into the Cumberland Mountains to collect